Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the nerd on the street, and today we're taking a look at package management on Red Hat and Fedora-based distributions. Alright everyone, so my previous episode of Bash Basics, the series for beginners to the Linux command line, was taking a look at package management on Debian and Ubuntu-based systems. Now in that video I talked a lot about package management in general, and I'm not going to be recapping every single detail from that video. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely go and watch that one if you want just a general overview about package management on Linux in general. Now in the Linux world, there are a lot of different distributions and a lot of them have their own package managers. And two of the more popular ones are going to be derivatives of Debian, such as Ubuntu, and derivatives of Red Hat and Fedora. And that's why I'm making this installment, because if you want to be proficient in Linux, it's good to be able to sit down at a variety of different distributions, and it's okay to have one distro that you're most comfortable with, but you want to be able to feel your way around any of them. So just in case you ever find yourself in front of a Red Hat-based system, or if you want to try setting yourself up a Fedora box sometime, we want to take a look at the RPM-based package management. Now in the past, Red Hat and Fedora used YUM, Y-U-M, that stands for Yellow Dog Updater Modified. Ubuntu has had apt for a long time, or apt-get and other utilities, and Red Hat for a long time had YUM. Recently, as in within the past couple of years, YUM has been replaced with a new tool called DNF. Just like I was covering the latest version of apt in my first video, this video is going to be covering DNF. The usage is very similar to YUM, but it is a little bit different from apt. If you're coming from Ubuntu-based systems onto Fedora-based systems, there are just a few key differences you'll want to watch out for, and that's what this video is going to highlight. So that's what we're doing today. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and cut to the desktop. Okay guys, and here we are on the desktop. I am going to boot up a Fedora 30 virtual machine here. We will go ahead and log in. And I'm just going to quickly adjust the screen resolution so that you guys can see this a little bit better. Alright, so we will open up a terminal and get started. One of the first things I showed you in the previous video was how to update your system if you were running Ubuntu. Similarly, if you're running Fedora, you will also want to keep your system relatively up to date. So like I said, we'll be using the DNF package manager. We are going to prepend sudo to most of our commands here to run these commands as root. So first we are going to run sudo dnf upgrade. Now when we run this and we put in our password, you'll see we are going to check for updates. Now this is one of the biggest differences between apt-based systems and DNF-based systems. Apt had two separate functions for update and upgrade. You'll recall that update checked our package lists and upgrade actually installed updated packages. DNF has a single function for both of those things. You can actually run DNF upgrade or DNF update. Those two commands do the exact same thing. Both of them will first check our repositories. As you can see here, it's downloading our package indexes. And then after a moment of processing, and DNF is known for being a little bit slower than apt. After a moment, we are going to get a full list of packages that we can upgrade, and we're getting the option right here. This is 1.2 gigabytes of downloads, which is quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. But as you can see, DNF has a single command that will check for updates and also apply the updates. Like I said, you can run DNF update or DNF upgrade. They do the exact same thing. Back when YUM was the package manager, it was more common to run YUM update. With DNF, they have changed the formal command to upgrade. And DNF won't just check for updates when you run the upgrade command. It will also check for updates pretty much any time you do anything. If you try and install a package, DNF will check for updates first. As you can see here, we are getting a range in our current item in these downloads. This is because DNF by default will be downloading 3 packages at the same time. That's one noticeable difference from apt, but aside from that, it is fairly similar. We've got our download speed over here, the total amount that we've downloaded so far, and a total ETA, which is just about 0 because we are almost done with these downloads. So once again, after a little bit more processing, we are going to install all of those packages. Now you can see that we only updated 747 packages, but down here in our progress we've got 1,470 tasks, and when we're running these scriptlets, that is counted as part of the same task as copying the new package's files over. But you can see when we are done going through the packages themselves and the upgrade, there are still some cleanup tasks that run and some more scriptlets that didn't need to run directly before or after a package update. So there are still some additional tasks that we'll go through after the upgrades themselves, and that's what the rest of the numbers are going to be. You can see DNF is also going to verify every single one of these packages after it's done with the rest of its operations. And it looks like it is done now, so it's given us a list of all the packages that it has upgraded, if we can find it here in our output. And then at the bottom, it's also going to give us a list of new packages that it's installed. These are new dependencies that were added as dependencies in the updates to these previous packages. So we can clear our screen from all of that output, and you may be wondering, okay, so DNF has one command to both check for and install updates. What if I just want to check for updates but not install them? Well, for that, we do have another command. It's DNF check-update. We can run that, we can put in our password, and it is going to update our repositories. And in this case, of course, it's going to tell us, well, it's not going to tell us anything because there are no updates available. Personally, I have not used this very much. If you're using Fedora, you're almost always just going to run DNF upgrade and let it install the updates. In fact, it's Ubuntu that's actually a little strange that separates those out into two different commands. Plenty of distributions do it this way, where it's one command for the whole process. So that's how to update packages. Now let's run through how to install new ones. Just like I talked about in my last video, if you're going to be using, say, Fedora, and you want to know what a specific package is called for a program, I would personally recommend you go to Fedora's website. They've got a packages search area, and in our case, we can search kcalc. It's going to be pretty obvious what this package is called, knowing what the program is called. But this way you can just verify before you run a command exactly what the package is. And you can also see its availability in different Fedora versions. And this is actually a ridiculously old version we're about to install here in Fedora 30. You know, Fedora calls itself bleeding edge, but it's really not. Anyway, if you don't want to use the web interface, if you do get stuck at a command line and you need to search what a package is called, we can do that with DNF as well. For instance, for kcalc in particular, we can run DNF search kcalc, and that's going to return after updating our package lists one more time. I really wasn't kidding when I said that DNF does that before just about every operation. After updating our repo lists excruciatingly slowly, DNF will eventually return some search results. Eventually. There we go. So eventually we got those search results. You can see we had one result, and this result had its name exactly match what we searched, which was kcalc. So this tells you that this is a package called kcalc that we can install, and its architecture is 64-bit. And we get a brief description, scientific calculator. Now let's say I didn't remember what kcalc was actually called, but I was just looking for a calculator. I can run DNF search calculator, and it's going to not download our package lists this time because it's got a timestamp on those. It sees we updated these 56 seconds ago, so we don't need to update them again. And DNF search is going to once again display some matches for us. Now in this case, since I just searched calculator, first we're going to get the list of results where both our name and our summary matched our search terms. So GNOME calculator has that word in its package name and in its summary. And so does the XFCE calculator. It's got the word calculator in both its name and its summary. Down here we've got a list of results where only the summary matched. So calculator is not in the name of the package, but as you can see with kcalc here, our third result, the word calculator was at least in the summary, so it did come up in our results. So now we've located the package we want to install. We can install it very simply with sudo dnf install kcalc. Once again, put in our password for sudo. And it took just a second, but you can see DNF, of course, is a modern package manager, so it will resolve our dependencies for us. And this is one area where DNF was actually, supposed to be at least, a big improvement over the prior Yum package manager. Yum took quite a while to resolve dependencies. DNF, at that particular piece at least, is quite a bit faster. So you can see we are installing kcalc, version 18.12.2, which once again is quite old. And this is the list of dependencies that we are pulling in with kcalc, once again because this is probably the first KDE application in this installation. It's quite a few dependencies. Now down here we've got one weak dependency. Just like on other distributions, Red Hat and Fedora can have different levels of requirements for its dependencies. There can be hard dependencies where the program will not start without this dependency installed. Kcalc, for instance, it requires KIO core. The program is built to depend on KIO core. If you don't have this installed, kcalc just wouldn't work. However, we do have some weak dependencies. These are more loosely recommended dependencies, and we are still going to install the weak dependencies by default, but say there was a conflict. Say that this dependency could not coexist with another package that we already had in our system. In that case, the weak dependency would be omitted, but we could still install all of the hard dependencies along with the program we're trying to install. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility while still preferring to install our recommended packages. That's what a weak dependency is. So we'll go ahead and accept those parameters. And after we run through and download all of those, and once again install them all, when that's done, we can go ahead and open up our activities menu, and we can find on our system kcalc, and we can open it up and we can do our important math. So that's great. So now we've got kcalc installed. Now let's say I realize that that was an awful lot of dependencies to pull in just for a calculator, and I might want to remove that. It's very easy to remove a program with DNF. We can run sudo DNF remove kcalc, and that will remove the kcalc package along with, as you can see, all of its dependencies. Now this is another example of where Ubuntu would take multiple commands to do this in apt, but Fedora is shortening it down to a single command with DNF. Apt, we would remove a package, and then we would have to go and run apt auto remove if we wanted to remove all the dependencies. DNF, it's just going to say, I installed KIO core for kcalc. If we're uninstalling kcalc, we don't need to have KIO core still installed. So it's going to remove all of those dependencies automatically, and we will let it go ahead and do that. There is a DNF auto remove command, but it's a little bit more heavy-handed than the apt auto remove command, and you generally won't want to run the DNF auto remove. It can break your system if you run it at the wrong time, and in general there's just no need to run it because, as you can see, simply running remove on a package will clean up the dependencies for you. One more example of how DNF condenses down from the apt commands is dealing with config files. So in my last video I talked about how the apt remove command would remove a package but leave its configuration files in place, whereas the apt purge command would remove the configuration files along with the package. Now with DNF, the configuration files are going to be removed along with the package by default. But to offset that, if you have modified a configuration file, if you've customized it, DNF will back it up for you. So let me show you what I mean by that. We're going to run sudo DNF install, and we're going to use phpMyAdmin again as an example. So that's going to download a few packages, including PHP, as you can see, because phpMyAdmin, obviously it's a PHP program. So one of the packages that phpMyAdmin just pulled in as a dependency was php-common. We can list all of the configuration files that a certain package has installed on our system using the rpm command. So just like apt on Ubuntu sits on top of dpackage, DNF is really running a bunch of rpm commands in the background, but it's taking care of things like dependencies that rpm can't handle on its own. So we can run rpm-query -config files, and we can stick the name of a package here, and we can get a complete list of all the config files that this package has placed on our system. So one of these packages is /etc/php.ini. We are going to quickly use v to get in there because Fedora does not have nano installed by default. And we're going to edit php.ini, and we're just going to add a comment at the top, right here, and we're going to say, this is my comment in all capitals. So we will go ahead and save this file. And now if we cat out /etc/php.ini, actually let's use the head command on php.ini. And there we go. So if we're reading the first few lines of this file, you can see this is my comment right at the top of the file. So DNF does have a reinstall command that we can run. We can run sudo DNF reinstall php common, which once again was the package that provided that configuration file. And this is not going to reset the configuration. This is just going to, in the off chance that we somehow messed up the binaries themselves, the actual program on our system, we can reinstall that program. It's going to re-download it just to make sure there was no corruption the first time it downloaded. And we can once again run the head command here, and we can see that our modification to this config file stayed here. Now that file, once again, it's in this /etc directory. So I'm going to run ls-al/etc/php.ini, and I'm going to put a star so that we can see any file that begins with php.ini. You can see right now there's only one, and it is our configuration file here that we have just modified a moment ago. Now I'm going to run sudo DNF remove php common, and actually that might fail. Oh, it's not going to fail. But it is going to remove phpMyAdmin as well, because phpMyAdmin depends on phpCommon, so if we're going to remove this, then the person standing on top of it has to go as well. So we'll go ahead and accept that, because I do want to remove this package from our system. And you can see right here this line, warning, etc phpMyAdmin/config.inc.php saved as etc phpMyAdmin config.inc.php.rpm save. And this is not the particular configuration file that we modified, but if we scroll down a bit here, here's the one that we modified. So php.ini was a configuration file, and RPM, the Red Hat package manager, which DNF is built on top of, detected that we had modified that configuration file. And so it saved a copy of that configuration file at /etc/php.ini.rpm save. So that file is still present on our system, but it has been moved. If I run my ls command again, you can see the file is no longer called php.ini. It's got this .rpm save extension added onto the end of it. Now that's kind of useful because say that we messed this up, we messed up our configuration and we did really want to reset the configuration, all we have to do is remove the package and then install it again. I can run sudo dnf install phpcommon. We'll skip the rest of those this time. We'll just grab the phpcommon package. And if we do an ls now, you can see we have gotten a new version of the configuration. This is the default config file from the .rpm package, which we can see the full package name of right here. So we have effectively reset our configuration. PHP is not going to look at a .rpm save file, it's looking for the php.ini file. And if we run head on etc php.ini, you can see it does not have our comment at the very top here. But we can run head on php.ini.rpm save, and it does have our comment here. So this does clutter up our file system a little bit. It can leave some extra config files laying around that we won't always need, but it is useful because it means that we both are able to reset our configuration relatively easily, and we keep backups of our modified configuration just in case we do need them. So that's quite a bit of information about DNF for you there. Just a few more commands we can run through. I did not talk about apt list in my last video, but it's a pretty useful command on Ubuntu, and Fedora also has the DNF list command. So we can run DNF list installed to list just all the packages that we have installed. This way, if you're wanting to rebuild a machine and you're wanting to make sure that you've got a copy of everything you have installed so you don't forget to install anything when you rebuild it, or if you're just trying to clean up a machine and you're looking for packages that maybe you installed one day but you don't think you need anymore, you can run DNF list installed to get a full list of those, and you can uninstall the ones that you don't think you need anymore. We were talking about dependencies earlier. We can list out package dependencies by running DNF dep list. For instance, kcalc I can run again. This is just going to grab our metadata and it's going to tell you both what the package is that it depends on. So kcalc depends on kf5 kinit, and it's going to tell you what that package is actually providing that is required for the package that we searched. So kf5 init 5.59.0 provides kf5 kinit. Maybe that's not a great example. If we come down here to some of the Qt stuff, for instance, kcalc depends on qt5-qtbase-5.12.4-4. Why does it depend on this package? Because it requires the libqt5core.so.5 library. So this gives you a little bit of information on what library or what file is actually needed from the package that we're pulling in. And it gives you a list, once again, of the packages that would be installed if you were to install that parent package or the dependent package. Finally, not everything that we install obviously is going to be in the default Fedora repositories. Fedora in particular is fairly restrictive with what gets into the repositories. So we're going to take a look at installing an RPM file from our hard disk, and we're also going to take a look at adding a third-party repository. First of all, the RPM file, if we go to google.com/Chrome, now don't try this at home. I would never actually recommend installing Chrome, but just to use as an example here, you can see the two formats we have available are .deb and .rpm, which is for Fedora, and OpenSUSE, which I'll make another video covering because it's a little bit different, even though it does use the Red Hat package manager under the hood. We can download that RPM file. We'll save it to our downloads folder. And now if we come back out to our terminal and we cd into our downloads folder, there are two ways we can install this RPM file. Just like on Ubuntu, we were able to use the dpackage command followed up by an apt install -f to fix our dependencies the dpackage didn't pull in for us. In Fedora, we technically could use the RPM command to install, in this case, Google Chrome. Now the problem with doing this is RPM is going to say, warning, for one thing, we don't trust that signature, but for another thing, we've got failed dependencies. Google Chrome needs some of these dependencies, and RPM doesn't know how to get them. RPM is just a simpler tool that lets us install one thing at a time. So we could force RPM to install this package without its dependencies, and then we could go back with DNF later and try and fix it. But instead of doing that, we are going to, once again, just use our DNF tool. We'll run DNF install /Google Chrome. We'll hit enter on that and put in our password, and it is going to resolve the dependencies. And it's grabbing fonts that we need, and it's grabbing libraries that we need, so it really makes the whole thing much easier. And after we get done installing all of that, I can open up activities, and once again I can search, and we have Google Chrome here on our system. Once again, would not recommend it, but that is how we manage that. Now finally, to demonstrate adding a third-party repository, once again we're going to use the Vivaldi web browser. If I get back out of my downloads folder here. So it's pretty easy in Fedora to add a new repository with DNF. We can just run sudo dnf config manager --add repo, and then the name of our repository, or the URL. And in Vivaldi's case, they give it to us right here. So we can copy that link and paste it in. And you can see that's it. We just added the URL to our system. So now we can run sudo dnf install Vivaldi stable. And you can see we are now checking the Google Chrome repository that RPM package added, and we're checking the Vivaldi repository that we just added manually. And we are going to install Vivaldi stable. We'll hit Y on this. It's going to download the package. And you can see the first time that we're downloading the package, it is going to ask us to verify we do want to import this GPG key. With Ubuntu, you're asked to verify this when you're adding the repository. Red Hat, it's going to wait until you actually try and use the repository because the signature is part of the package. So we can install that, and now we can open up Vivaldi. Once again, proprietary web browser, not a great idea, but it's there, and we will exit it. So all of these Bash Basics videos are pretty simple. They are made for beginners. If you've used Fedora a lot recently, then I probably didn't show you much you didn't already know, maybe one or two things, I hope. But if you're like me and you don't use Fedora or Red Hat all that often, then you might have needed a little refresher on DNF. So hopefully this video was helpful to you, and if this was helpful or entertaining, I would encourage you to go to nerdclub.knots.co and consider becoming a Nerd Club member for just $3 a month. It really helps me out in making these videos, so go to nerdclub.knots.co to read about that. But for now, that's everything you need to know to manage your packages on Fedora and Red Hat-based systems. I'm Jacob Kauf, and I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.